Hello artists, welcome to your Oregon painting class with Young at Art. In front of you, you should have your canvas sketch with the state of Oregon on there. You should have a larger brush and a smaller brush, a paper towel, also a cup of water, a darker green, a lighter green, a blue, a black, a white, and a brown. And I always like to keep a paper plate next to me in case I want to mix my colors. But let's go ahead and get started. We are going to first wash and dry both of our brushes, get them nice and clean. Just twirl them in your cup, and then just kind of pat them on your paper towel so there's not too much water on them. The first thing we're going to work on is our background, and we're going to want to make it look like wood, the texture of wood. So what we're going to do is we're going to grab our larger brush and just tap it into the brown paint. Be sure it's not dripping on there. You just want a little bit of brown paint. And we're going to be making sweeps of lines going left to right, right to left. Above to the left, to the right, and below my cutout, or excuse me, my organ shape. So just gonna sweep your brush side to side only. So we're gonna go in there and just kind of move our brush, and we're sweeping, which means we're just kind of flicking at the end of our brush stroke to get those feathery ends. About maybe 20 or 30 of these. Just kind of, again, moving side to side. Some longer, some shorter, but do your best to kind of stay out of that organ shape. Once you are done, and you're just kind of moving around your organ shape side to side, left to right only. Once you are done, do not clean your big brush. You're just going to dip your big brush into your white paint. So my dirty big brush, and I'm just going to be sweeping on top of my brown with white. And I can always go back for more. Sorry, I got some bristles on there. So I'm just going to be going side to side again, flicking my brush, my larger brush, and I'm just kind of going over my brown. And I'm going over my brown before it dries because I do want the brown and the white to kind of be working together. So they're two wet colors. So the brown and the white are two wet paints that are working together. And again, do your best to try to stay out of the organ shape. If you accidentally go in there, it's no problem. I'm just kind of going over these brown areas before they dry so I can get them moving a little bit better. If you want, you can go back to more brown too. More white. Just kind of get that space all filled in. I am going to add some water to my brush and just kind of go over my brown and white. Again, just flicking. And I'm constantly moving my brush. I'm not in the same spot. I'm always just kind of moving my brush from one space to the next. And that water is going to help it kind of move a little bit better too, because you do not want to see any of that white canvas poking through. Go back to more brown, more white. Again, keep that brush moving, and you're just flicking it back and forth, adding brown, adding white, adding water. Make sure you're getting into all those spaces around your organ shape. Oops. And again, it's okay if it gets inside the shape a little bit. You just want to do your best to kind of keep on the outside of it. Excuse me. And that water is really going to help move your paint. So water, tap on my paper towel, just kind of go over it. If you got too much brown on there, let it dry. Go over it with white a little bit so it doesn't keep blending. I'll just kind of cover up the brown if you put too much on there. So it's kind of like a nice base coat before we add a little bit more brown on top. Usually with my canvas paintings, I do paint the 4 sides, but since this one looks like wood, I'm just gonna keep it to the front of my canvas. I'm not gonna really worry about painting the 4 sides of this one. So I have a nice kind of starting point of where I have my blue and my white kind of sweeping side to side. Once I'm done, I am gonna concentrate on just more brown on my brush. So I'm gonna add brown on my big brush. I haven't washed anything off, so just add the brown. I'm gonna tap it on my paper towel a couple times. I'm gonna go in there and just add some areas of brown, just a little bit darker on there. And if it's blending in too much with your brown and white background that you just made, maybe give it a little bit more time to dry, and then you can kind of have it sitting on top of that blend a little bit better. And you can always go back and forth. I like to do some off the edges too, where I'm just kind of sweeping in off the edges, kind of framing it a little bit. So I'm kind of flicking in from the right side to the left, tap, 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 and I'm flicking it from the left side. Kind of help frame the edges a little bit more, and you can get closer into the bottom, and the top was a little bit more brown. Like so. Perfect. So again, flicking in on that side, flicking in on that side. You can go add brown, tap it on your paper towel so you don't have too much on there. Just kind of creating a nice border, like so. All right, and then once I am done, I do want to kind of cover up this pencil line just a little bit with my brown paint. So I'm going to add brown to my big brush again, pat it off on my paper towel, and I'm just going to go around my Oregon shape, just on the bottom part, side to side, kind of covering up that pencil line a little bit, just small, sweepy, little flicks of my brush, just to kind of cover it up. Brown. I'll do the same on the left side, but I'm just kind of working on the outskirts to kind of get that Oregon shape back. Go over my pencil line just a little bit. Pat on the paper towel. It's kind of working out from the left. If you feel like you got too much brown on there, you can always add white to your brush, pat on the paper towel, and just kind of work that white in there too. But you do want like the shape of Oregon to kind of stand out a little bit more, so you do want to add some brown all around the edges. The right side too, kind of flicking out. Every time I sweep out, it's going to get those feathery edges. Later on, we will outline on our Oregon shape with black, so if you can still see a little bit of your pencil mark poking through, no problem. The top part, pat on my paper towel, kind of same side to side, kind of like how I did on the bottom. It's kind of working along the shape of Oregon. Sorry, I'm gonna get my screen up running. Make sure all the sides look like they're working together pretty well. So again, on the bottom, I just kind of did choppy little sweeps side to side. Same with the top, choppy little movements side to side. On the right side, I flicked out to the right. On the left side, I flicked out to the left. So I'm gonna just go back and touch those up and make sure it looks nice and clean before I move on. And again, if you feel like you got too much brown on there, you can let it dry and go back and add a little bit more white on top to kind of clean it up a little bit more. So there's my nice Oregon shape. Looks great. All right, so I'm gonna let this dry just for a moment before I start building inside of my Oregon shape. So be sure it doesn't look too shiny, because if you have a shiny wet paint and another shiny wet paint touches it, they're gonna mix and blend. So be sure you have some drying time between the two steps of before you start building in your Oregon. You can always pause this video and then move on to the next step whenever your background isn't so shiny and wet. All right, so whenever you are done with this step and you're moving on to the next step, be sure your big brush is really nice and clean. So you're gonna wash and just kind of wrap your big brush in your paper towel, make sure there's no brown on there. And we are gonna separate our painting into 3 spaces. We're gonna separate into sky, water, and land. I'm gonna take my big brush and dip it into my blue paint. And not at the halfway point, but maybe just a little bit lower down. So this is, I'm cutting my Oregon in half horizontally, but I'm gonna come down just a little bit further down. I'm gonna make a line with my blue, just barely some blue on my brush. I'm gonna make a line that separates sky from land. So just a little bit lower than halfway. I'm gonna make a horizontal line. Perfect. And then on the very right side, I am gonna start at the line and just kind of make a curvy line that goes all the way to the corners. So all the way from up here to down here, I'm gonna make a line that separates land from water. So you have your 2 lines, a little bit less than halfway down, or more than halfway down, and then starting in the corner with a little bit of a curve, meeting in that corner. And then I'm gonna come down a little bit further down. My water is going to get wider and wider as I go further down. So I'm pretty much going to go from this point right here, kind of get a little bit wider to this point right here. I'm going to connect the two. So it's going to go a little bit thin, and I'm going to get a little bit wide with my water. Just a little bit further. So 2 areas. So sky, land, water, land. Perfect. Since I have the blue on my brush, I am going to just go ahead and go back to my blue, get a nice little scoop of it, and a nice scoop of white, and make a really light blue for my sky. I'm going to go in there and paint my sky first. So I'm going to take a little bit of my blue and maybe 2-3 scoops of white to where it's a really light blue. And all that sky space, all I'm going to do is paint it a nice light blue. I'm gonna even go over my blue line that I made too. So nice light blue sky. Back to my mix. I'm just kind of painting it in a nice side to side motion, trying my best to kind of keep in that Oregon shape. You can even go on it and kind of create this outline. Be sure your brown is nice and dry. Work out from it. There you go, side to side. Going over my line again. So I have my blue and a scoop or 2 of white. Make sure you have enough. Or a couple scoops of white, and making sure my sky is nice and light blue. Make sure you don't have any big chunks of light blue on your sky. You want to make sure it's nice and flat. Kind of go above your edges. Just going to drag your brush, working along those edges. More light blue. Dragging your brush, and then going in there and filling it in. So you have a nice light blue sky. And you can go over your pencil lines a little bit. We are gonna go, if you still see them peeking through, we are gonna go back and outline them in black a little bit later on. So you have a nice light blue sky. Like so. Be sure you don't have any white poking through. You wanna get all that sky space filled out. Still see a little bit of my blue line, that's okay. All right, so I have a nice light blue sky. Since I still have light blue on my brush, I am going to go in the center of my water area and just going to sweep some lines in the middle, side to side. So in the middle area of that water kind of strip, I'm going to go in there and just kind of make some lines going side to side, sweeping side to side, more in the middle area of my water. I didn't even clean my brush, I just went back to that light blue mix and worked it in the center of my water. So you have your light blue sky and your light blue sweeps going side to side in the middle of that path for your water. And then I will go back, I don't even clean my big brush, I will go back just with the blue by itself and just kind of flick in from my line in from the left side. It's gonna go in that path. With my big brush again, I'm just kind of going in the left side and flicking in. And on the right side, I'll flick towards that light blue too. And I'll just kind of get some light blue flicking in as well. So the left side is sweeping in, the right side is sweeping in, like so. So I have my light blue kind of peeking through in the middle. Be sure you are staying inside that water space. Once I'm done getting the dark blue on the left side, the dark blue on the right side, and I have that light blue in the middle, I am going to get my brush wet, pat it on my paper towel. So wet, pat on my paper towel. And I'm going to use my water and my brush to kind of soften this up just a little bit. A little bit too harsh. Kind of go over my dark blue. Even go back into my light blue a little bit. That water on your brush is going to definitely help your dark blue and your light blue work together a little bit better. So if you want to go back to your light blue, add some in the middle. If you want to go back to your dark blue, add some more on the left and the right. But be sure to add water to your brush, tap it on the paper towel, and use your water as a way for all of them to work together a little bit better. So just go back and maybe touch up my dark blue by sweeping it in a little bit. Sweeping it in. Just a little bit. Right side. I'll go back to my light blue more in the middle. Just kind of sweeping in the middle. And then again, I can use my water. Tap on my paper towel. It's going to help those work together a little bit better. And sweeping them in. And if you lost the shape of your water, you can go back to your dark blue and just kind of outline on the bottom part. And drag my brush, outline on the top part. And get a nice, clean edge to those. Like so. Perfect. And be sure to use that water on your paint. Tap it on your paper towel before you go onto your canvas so your brush isn't too wet. Just kind of go back and forth. And if it's moving too much, just kind of give it some drying time and then go back over it again. I think I might even go back on mine after it dries a little bit more to kind of touch it up. You can even add a little bit of white on your brush. Tap it on the paper towel and kind of go in there and get some lighter areas down here where the sun seems to be hitting the water a little bit more. So I just went back. I didn't even clean my brush. I just added a little bit of white a little bit further down on my water. Gorgeous. So I have my light blue sky. I have my water area. And I'm going to wash and dry my big brush. Again, I'm going to wrap my big brush with my paper towel so I don't have any blue on it. I want to really clean up that blue. So I'm just going to wrap it with my paper towel. In the land area, I am going to be working with light green, a little bit of white, a little bit of dark green. So they're all going to be kind of working together. And again, be sure your blues are nice and dry before you get anywhere close to them with your greens so they don't mix. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off with a little bit of green. And a little bit of light green. A little bit of white on my brush at the same time. And So light green and white, and I'm just gonna be going up, kind of flicking it like grass in my 2 land areas. So just gonna flick up the way that grass grows in your land area. Start with the bottom area, so green, white. If you feel like you have too much on there, just pat it off on your paper towel and just kind of sweep up in the direction that the grass is growing. Be careful of your blue. I'll get closer to my blue a little bit later on as it dries a little bit more, but I'm gonna start with my white in the middle. So a little bit of green, a little bit of white. If you have too much on there, just gonna pat it off on your paper towel. Again, these are my 2 land areas, and I'm just kind of sweeping up. Kind of looks like grass blades that are sweeping up. So green, light green, white. Be careful of any wet blue paint. You want to kind of avoid it, and you can get closer to it as it dries more and more. Can go up into the sky a little bit, overlap. But you want to flick up kind of in the direction that your grass is growing. You can go back to your light green, back to your white as much as you need. It's just kind of scattered. Overlapping over my sky just a little bit. So you can see those grass blades. Sweep. Down here. Light green, white. Too much clumps on that. Work up from that line. Sweep up. You can go over your water area just a little bit. Just be sure that that blue is nice and dry so you don't catch any of that blue paint on your big brush. So green, light green, white. Just kind of sweeping up. I caught some of that blue. And then just be sure all of your land area, is covered up with your green and white sweeps of grass going up. Maybe work a little bit on the edge of here and then sweep up. As I'm getting closer to that blue, I might go along the side. Sweep up. All those nice little grassy areas. Like so. All right, looks great. All right, I am gonna give these a moment to dry. But my next step is building my trees. I'm gonna have some trees closer up and some trees a little bit further back. But I'm going to go ahead and let these, the grass dry for a couple minutes. I'll wash and dry my big brush. And again, if you need to kind of pause the video so you can let your grass dry for a little bit longer, you can. Just be sure that it's not too shiny. But once you have let the grass dry, you are going to go in there and grab your small brush and a little bit of brown, a little bit of white at the same time, a little bit of brown and white on your small brush, and you're gonna start building your trees. I'm just gonna build some lines going up and down, like the number ones, and then I'll go in there and fill them a little bit more, but I wanna kind of plant my trees first. And remember, the harder you push on your small brush, the thicker the lines become. So my first tree, it's gonna be over, sorry, I have a little bit of a hair right there. My first tree is gonna be to the right. I'm gonna come up a little bit further from the bottom, and a little bit to the right of my water, and I'm just gonna go there and just make little sweepy marks. I want my tree about that tall. So that's my first line, and it doesn't have to be perfect. I'm gonna go in there and fill it in a little bit later, but a little bit of brown, a little bit of white, I'm gonna have a second tree a little bit further up and closer to the water. Go in there. And you can make short choppy lines or a long line. I'm just gonna stop right there. A little bit of brown, a little bit of white. I'm gonna go on the left side and I'm gonna make a tree right here, kind of to the right of the edge. One a little bit to the right, maybe a little bit higher up, like so. And then I'm gonna have more in the background. So a little bit of brown, a little bit of white. I'm gonna have them starting on the grass where they grow. So be sure you're always starting on the grass. A little bit of space between them, a little bit of space between that one. Some further back. Maybe another one further back, like so. All right, I think that's a good amount of trees for this small canvas. So I have 2 on the right, one a little bit lower down, one a little bit higher up and close to the water. And then I have one that's a little bit closer, again, and to the right of my line for my Oregon a shape. And then I'm gonna work up, make these lines, and then some further back. Be sure, again, they're all starting in the grass where they're growing. Before I put any greenery on top, I'm gonna go back and kind of fill them up. The bottom parts are gonna be a little bit wider, and I'm gonna have some branches coming out. So all I've done so far is just kind of laid out my lines, go back for a little bit brown, a little bit of white, and then I'm gonna start on this one, just kind of come out a little bit on the left side, come out a little bit on the right side. I'll go in there and kind of push a little bit harder with my brush. I'm just gonna do like super short choppy movements so I get that texture. Fill it in a little bit more. So my first tree. And I do want to give this one some branches. I'm going to be just on the tippy toes of my brush. I'm going to come up about halfway and come up and diagonal, just barely pushing on my brush. I'll do the same thing on the right side, coming up a little bit more and barely pushing on my small brush. Same thing to the one on the right of it, but maybe with a couple more branches. So brown and white, going in there and filling in the bottom a little bit more. Pushing a little bit harder on my brush, so it's that line's a little bit thicker. This is all with my small brush. I think my big brush, I'm scared to go a little bit too big too fast, so I'm rather work with my small brush. A little bit of brown, a little bit of white. Same as before, but more branches. So I'm gonna start halfway, come up a little bit, and then just go up in a diagonal, maybe up in a diagonal here. And you can even have some of these breaking off in kind of like a Y shape. Maybe come up a little bit higher. They're all kind of going in a diagonal, like so. And then I'll start with these ones on the left side. Kind of coming up in a diagonal. Coming up into, make that bottom part of that tree a little bit thicker. Pushing a little bit further. Brown and white. Coming up a little bit higher. So, same with the other ones. The other one's a little bit further back, so I'm not going to come out too much. You can kind of barely see that bottom. A little bit of brown, a little bit of white. Add as many branches as you want. Maybe a little bit up diagonal, up diagonal. Have some maybe breaking off into the letter Y. If you want to pause the video at this point so you can kind of catch up on your branches, you can. Again, just be sure the bottom parts of the trees are a little bit thicker. So a little bit of brown, a little bit of white. It's barely coming out on the bottom of these ones. Up and diagonal, up and diagonal. You can have some break off into kind of like the letter Y. If you feel like your brush is getting dry, just add a little bit of water, tap it on the paper towel. You can go over your brown to kind of smooth it out a little bit more. Then a little bit of brown, a little bit of white. Can kind of continue on the same idea for all your trees. Just be on the tippy toes of your brush. Don't push too hard. Brown and white. Kind of go back and forth. Come out a little bit further on either side. Okay. Then this one back here. Can have some breaking into the letter Y, come up. Like so. So you're building some nice trees. And I am going to let those trees dry for a little bit. Sorry, let me get my phone back up so I can see the image I'm working from. So I'm going to let those trees dry for a little bit before I put any greenery on top. Before I do that, I am going to go down here and add some darker green. So that darker green we have, just kind of working around our browns on the bottom part. Again, be sure this bottom part is nice and dry. The bottom parts of your trees are nice and dry. Be sure you have a nice, clean, small brush. I'm going to add a little bit of dark green and light green and white all on my small brush at the same time. Pat on my paper towel. Again, if you missed it the first time, dark green, light green, white. Pat it on my paper towel. Be sure the bottom parts of your trees are nice and dry. But around the bottom part of your trees, you can go in there and make some smaller little grass blades, kind of working around them. Just kind of flicking out, almost like sun rays. So dark green, light green, white. Pat on your paper towel. Those three are going to be kind of working together. So around the trees, at the bottom part of your trees, just kind of flick some dark, light, green, and white. Tap, tap, tap. I'm just going to go a little bit closer to the bottom. Again, be sure that brown is nice and dry before you add any grass blades to the bottom. Cover this one up a little bit more. Don't love the bottom part of that one. And then if you wanted to add some kind of patchy areas of dark green, light green, and white, maybe a little bit further out, add some little patchy areas, but barely any paint on your brush. You can do some patches on the left side, the right side. Kind of breaks up that green just a little bit, so you can just kind of go in there and add some little patchy areas with barely any paint on your brush. I tapped off most of it. And if you got too much of this darker green look, you can let it dry and go back to your lighter green and white if you want to, like so. And you're going to have that same idea when you go on top of the trees. You're going to do darker green, lighter green, and white. Be sure that your brown is nice and dry, and your trees are going to have kind of like a triangular shape where they're thicker on the bottom and pointier on top, and not all of them are filled in. Some of them you're just going to have the brown on there. But this one up front that I want to come down about, I guess at this point, just kind of closer to the center. I'm going to overlap over this branch a little bit, but all I'm going to do, let me get some more greens on my brush, sorry. So green, dark green, light green, and white. I'm just going to make a line that goes side to side. And then I'm just going to kind of zigzag on my way up, left to right, and make sure I go to a pointy top. And then I can go back and fill it in. So let me do that again. So dark green, light green, white, maybe pat some off so you don't have too much on there. I'm going to make a line going side to side, and then I'll zigzag back and forth and back. And I'm just jumping with my small brush. Jump, 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 jump. And I can go back in there and just kind of fill it in a little bit more. You can still have some branches peeking through. You can even kind of come further down if you feel like you want to come further down. But be sure it's wider on the bottom part and you're getting pointier as you go higher up. zigzagging back and forth with my brush, jumping up and down and bringing it to a nice point. Come down a little bit further, I feel like I want. All right, so let me do another one. So dark brown, excuse me, dark green, light green, white, tap, tap, tap. And then I'm gonna start on this one right here, come up a little bit further up than this branch so I can kind of see it still poking through. Make a line going side to side where it's gonna be at its longest. So I'm making a line, tap, 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 side to side, and then I'm gonna zigzag up and making sure I'm getting thinner and thinner with my line, kind of making it come to a point. Dark green, light green, white, tap on my paper towel. It's going in there and just kind of filling it in a little bit more. Can come down a little bit more if I feel like I want to fill it up. But be sure again it has a triangular shape and you're just jumping up and down with your small brush. It's a little bit wider on the bottom, like so. I am going to do one more tree, which is this tree right here. So again, dark green, light green, white. Tap on your paper towel so you don't have too much on there. I'm going to start a little bit kind of in the middle area, having this one branch exposed. I'm going to make this line going side to side, and then I'm going to find like a zigzag all the way up, making those lines shorter and shorter and coming to a nice point. You can go in there and fill it in after that. Again, kind of keeping to that triangular shape. Come down a little bit further. I still have some branches kind of peeking through too. Like so. And if you wanted to add more greenery in this painting, you can. Like so. All right. So those three kind of working in there, which is really nice. All right. Once you've added as much green as you want to your trees, again, you can add more if you wanted to do another tree, this one or that one. It's absolutely up to you, and then have some still exposed with the branches. Then you are going to go ahead and wash and dry your brush. And this step is absolutely optional. If you feel like you like your painting the way it is, stop at this point. But if you want to outline the shape of Oregon in black, that's going to be your next step. So I'm going to wash and dry my small brush, bring it to a nice point. I'm going to take my black paint just a little bit, and I'm just going to outline the shape, barely pushing down on my brush, barely pushing, and then just kind of cleans up my edges. If you want, you can even make like a darker brown by adding a little bit of brown and black together. So small brush, bring it to a nice point. Be sure you get all that water out of there. Just kind of follow the pencil line that's still kind of peeking through. Drag that brush. That black tends to get dry really fast, so I do go back and forth to my water. Be sure your green is nice and dry so the green and black don't blend together. Around my branches. It's a nice way to clean up this painting. Just barely pushing on my small brush, and I'm dragging it all the way through. Like so. Go back and bring this to a nice point, and maybe go over that black right there so it doesn't look so harsh. Nice line back. It always helps it clean up nicely. Be sure you don't have too much water on your brush when you do the black, or it's going to expand. Remember, if you think this black is too harsh, you can add a little bit of brown to it and make like a nice dark brown, but it's absolutely up to you. And there you go. There is your beautiful Oregon painting. I think something that we treasure more than ever right now is this, our beautiful outside space. There you go. Awesome. Well, I hope you enjoyed the class. I hope if you want to go back and touch up anything, you're welcome to go back. Just be aware of any wet paints and them blending together. I think I'm going to actually go back. I'm going to touch up this tree just a little bit. Go over that black line that I made a little bit too thick. But I hope you had a fun time painting the Oregon painting with me. Thank you so much for grabbing a kit from our studio, and I hope you have a beautiful day. Love, Young at Art.